Hello there. Welcome to your Golden 3D to 5D Ascension Bridge. My name is Darla. Thank you so much for joining me here today. And just a disclaimer right off the bat, this video is not intended for children. It is for mature audiences. So if you get a little bit spooked by paranormal type things, then I suggest you probably should turn the video off now and skip to maybe part 4 of the Ascension series. This is part 3. Thank you so much for being here. And so today we are going to cover, we're going to start with a prayer, of course, and we're going to talk about the importance of free will. We'll use my deep dive story as an example, and this is a story that I've never told anybody, and I wasn't going to tell anybody, but the angels and my guides are really nudging me to tell you all because there's a lot of learning experience there about the importance of free will and co-creating with the angels and God. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you that story. So that's why I'm telling you, like, a story's not for everybody, and I'll just tell you right now that maybe you'll believe me, maybe you don't. That's not really my goal. I think I just want to tell you the story. I'll probably feel better after I tell it. I hope anyway. Any way that I can feel better is a good thing. So thank you so much for being here. And it's also going to be a shout out to the fairies. This story also has a big shout out to the fairies. So starting right off here, let's move our thoughts deep into our hearts with gratitude. Just take a moment to just do that. Dear God, thank you for the protection and guidance. Thank you for opening us up to that guidance. Thank you, God, for making us in your liking. Thank you, God, for loving us enough to give us this experience. You trusted us to find our way home, and we are home. The separation is an illusion, and we thank you for that because it allows us to be unique. Thank you for co-creating with us. Amen. Okay, put this away. Alrighty, so the importance of free will. Okay, so this happened, I want to say about 4 years ago. I want to say it was like 2015 or the beginning of 16, around that area, around that time. So I got my meditation station one day, and I am outside. I just love the energy here. So there's going to be bugs and noise and stuff, but it's not a deal breaker. I love the energy here. So thank you for bearing with me here. So and I love this time too because this is during the Lionsgate period. So the energy is coming from spirit to us is magnified a lot. So I'm just super excited to be here. So I just wanted to throw that out there first real quick, and thank you so much. So and also we're just gonna call that person that does not have our highest best interest at heart a pinwheel, because not that I have anything against pinwheels, but I just don't want to like say the names like specifically. So we're just going to say pinwheel 1 and all the little pinwheels. Okay. Cause pinwheels, you stick them in and they spin. Nothing against pinwheels, but that's my story and I'm sticking to it. So, I sat in my meditation station one day and all of a sudden I was quite aware that I was just surrounded. Like, dude, you guys, you have no idea. Angels, like the Lincoln Memorial angels, like, and then some, like more angels than I knew ever even existed in the universe. Like, I am surrounded by angels. And I suppose most people would be like, hallelujah on high, angels, they've come, not me. I'm like, but it terrified me because I guess that's how I got this job. But I was like, oh my gosh, it's like the Calvary showing up. It's like, oh my God, it's like, why do we need so many angels? I just felt like this grave feeling just come over me. I'm like, why do we need so many angels? Like, this is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. So I looked over at Archangel Michael and my other angels, and they were like, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. We need this many angels because we need to show you. And so I'm going to tell you I'm going to try to tell you this from like third person perspective. So they kind of took me back to like before I was born. And there I was standing there with Michael and Raphael, and we're looking at like my life, like a map, like a road map of my life. And I could see like it was really hard, and it got really like kind of crazy. Like for quite some time, it was real crazy, and it got real tough. And then they were like, and then we need you to do this. And at first I was like, okay, well, first of all, like you wouldn't even be asking me to do this if you didn't think I could do it. So like I went over my life one more time just to make sure, and I was like, yeah, I can do this, I can do that. And what that was okay, this kind of requires me going back to tell you another story. So right around this same time, I would say maybe like just a few months earlier prior to this, there was this guy during this time period that I had dated him at first, and then I realized that like he just didn't have my highest best at heart, and I was trying to get rid of him, and he was impossible to get rid of, and he was like my arch enemy in a lot of ways. I don't want to even give him that, but anyways, it's just this good looking brother, just I connected with him, in the beginning, everything was great. And then it was just like, while I always learned things from him, it was always like a battle with him, to either get him to help or get out. And he just would never do either. It was like they tried to send their finest to like try to stop me from doing this. So one day, like realizing that I'm overrun, like the cops can't do anything for me. I can't move. There isn't anything I can do except try to like make the best out of this situation, and him like keeping showing up. And somehow one day I'm like, if you're going to stick around here, like, if you're not going to respect my will and leave me alone, then you're going to have to let me do some energy work on you. He'd already let me try to do some energy work on him. And like, he posed like a knight in like black armor when I got in there. And it was like trying to peek under. It was like, yeah, right. Like, you're letting me in here to do any energy work on you. I don't think so. So this time I'm like, you got to really let me in this time. I ain't joking you. We're going to really do some real energy work on you, or you just need to leave. Well, he wasn't in the mood to leave, apparently, or something, because he agreed to let me in. So I'm like, okay. So as soon as I got in, like Archangel Michael like swoops in, and he's like, I've been waiting to get in here for a very long time. Like, don't watch, like, don't look kind of thing. And I was just like, whoa, like I just knew, like, just, this isn't for me. I'm supposed to look this way, whatever. It's just like this instant knowing, like, okay. And like, you don't have to, you just know. And so while I was busy, like trying to keep the space open, I don't know what was going on over there. I was like, I realized that I was huge, like, because my soul is actually too big to fit in my body, I've been told. And that makes a lot of sense to me, actually. And I was standing on Canada, and I'm looking down on the United States, and I'm looking at like all these really dark areas and like all this like energy work that need to be done to like just the United States alone. And we're going to like, please send me a personal message if there's any areas that you'd like. In fact, I'm going to post something actually, and we'll get these areas some focused intentional love to these areas that you all are concerned about. So we'll get a list going, and we'll collectively get that going. So so as I'm looking over this, I'm realizing that we really need to do that, but I'm like trying to keep this space open, and I get to this side, and there's like this, I want to call it like it was just like a big sack of something. I don't know what it was, but it was just awful, and it just needed to come off. Just this thing, it was just kind of a gangrene kind of area on the earth. It was just really bad. And so I'm supposed to cut this thing off, right? So they're like, remember that thing? I'm like, yeah. Like, you need to cut this thing off. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, okay. So I agreed to do it. And they showed me like in this meditation with all these angels, like, remember, okay, so you agreed. I'm like, okay, I agreed to do it. Okay, I'm like, okay, so I can do this. Like, you wouldn't have asked me if I wasn't ready, and you wouldn't even be talking to me about it now if I wasn't ready, and so they instructed me to just not think about it, not talk about it, just try to keep it out of my realm. And at a certain specific date and time, like when the planets were just aligned or something, I was to cut this thing off. So I'm like, okay, so let's do this. So at first it's like, okay, well, I need to see like what I need to cut off. I need to go in there myself. And it's like, okay, well, you need to shapeshift. Like, this is in like 4D. And this is a big reason why I want to jump over like this bridge, 3D to 5D bridge. Because like all of this happens in 4D. So it's like a free will area, but it's kind of like stuck between like Earth and like some like higher vibrational plane. So anyways, just a lot of chaos going on in that area. But so so I needed to jump in like in spirit to go see. And so I'm like, I'm ready to shapeshift. I need to know what I need to shapeshift into, because I can't go in there and cut this thing off if I can't shapeshift. So I'm like, I got to know what I'm doing. So they give me an opportunity to go down this like chute to like go down there and see. So I get down there, and I'm like immediately like surrounded by like these little mini pinwheels everywhere, and I'm like, I'm not worried about it. I see this thing that I need to cut, and it's like, okay, it's pretty awful. It's got a pretty good like base to it. I'm like, but it's, it needs to go. Like the earth is suffering, and you can't really move on with unless this thing gets cut off. So I'm like, okay, so all of a sudden, these little pinwheel dudes, oh my gosh, the light just went out. That's creepy. Okay, I'm going to actually pause this video and like get a better light. I'm sorry, you guys. Okay, so I'm like surrounded by like these minion things, and they see me. Oh, I was going to call them pinwheels. That's right. I'm sorry, but they were like that anyway, but whatever. So I was like, using like my light and love, like with light, love, and gratitude, like I command you to leave, like to like leave me alone, like get away from me when they saw me. And like, it was like they were completely soulless, like they were like machines, like, and they just like came at me in like groves. And I was like, oh my God. And then I realized that like, I had to like, I felt like Aang from The Last Airbender. I think that was the movie, yeah, where he like uses his like, because I have earth, air, water, and fire that have been gifted to me over the years. I got earth first, and then water, then fire, then air. And I used my earth tool to like, stall these guys from like attacking me. And then I look up, and there's like so many coming at me that like there's like a hole in the middle like this, that like I have like such a small opportunity to get out of there. And I shot out of there so fast, out of that center hole. I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm getting chills just talking about it. So then I'm like I'm out of there, and I'm back in my meditation chair, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. I'm just like, okay, well now I know what I need to shift into. I got to look like one of those things, and so then so I'm like, okay, so now I need to like cut this thing off. So we got to simulate that too. So a lot of times we do the simulating thing if it's a big thing. I've been doing like behind the scenes energy work for a while, so years, like decades, so a couple decades at least, right? I don't know. It just seems like a while. But so we simulate first. So here I am in simulation and meditation, and there's Archangel Michael on that side, and I'm on this side, and here's like a fake one of these like big things that I need to cut off. So in like it like his head nod, we're gonna cut this thing together. And I'm like, okay, so he nods his head, and like I realize I don't even have a sword, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So like with my earth tool again, I like fasten a sword real quick, and I'm just like bam, and we both like hit at the same time, and like his side like cuts like butter, my side like bounces off. I'm like I didn't even make a dent in this thing, and these pinwheels like came and got me. Like I was done. I suppose in real life I would look like catatonic or something, and I want those souls to come home too. That's part of the justice that I want. But so in the simulation, like I was gone. I'm like, wow. I'm like, that's I look over at Archangel Michael, and I'm like, I look at his sword, I'm like, I need one of those. And he like shakes his head like yeah, like I'm like, really? I'm like, I get to use the sword? And he's like, uh-huh. I'm like, wow. I'm like, is it duplicatable? Like we each get one? And he's like, no. And I was like, and I don't know why I hadn't thought of it until this point in time, but that was like the first time I had realized that I was going in alone. Like this whole time I thought that like Archangel Michael was be coming in with me, and like it's all cool, I don't have to worry too much, and then they explained to me like, this is why you agreed to do this, because this is, otherwise we'd have just cut it off a long time ago, but this is free will. This is a free will area. The angels can't just go in and cut it off. So I have to go in with my own free will and cut this thing off by choice. So and this is what I agreed to do. So I'm like, okay, but I get to use the sword, which is totally cool. So like, it's like the good news, bad news story. It's like you're going in alone, but you get to use the sword. So I'm like, okay, I get to use the sword. Like obviously it's going to manifest right when I need it, or because that's not going to work. Otherwise I can't shapeshift a sword. So the day came that I was supposed to do this, and I'm doing the dishes, and I made sure that the kids were fine, everybody eating dinner, and everything was just really chill, really relaxed. I wasn't thinking about it. I'm like doing the dishes, and then the time came, and I was like, okay, I turned off the sink, dried off my hands, walked into my bedroom, got into my meditation station, and the next thing I knew, I was like right in front of that same tube again that I went down the first time. And my guides and angels are here, and they're like reminding me, like, okay, remember, it's shapeshift, like shift with all your might. I'm like, I know, and I'm trying to shift, and I'm worried about not being able to shift enough. I'm like, oh my gosh, what if I can't shift enough to do this, you know? And they're like, and your cat, I had this wonderful cat at the time, and they're like, don't worry about the cat. The cat's going to try to jump in front of you and try to stop you from swinging your arms to cut this thing. But I had to physically move my hands, or it wasn't going to work. Like, I had to have serious intention with this thing. So they're like, don't worry about the cat. The cat will be fine. It's just going to try to stop you. Don't let it stop you. You know, and here's a cloak. Like, right before I went in, they like threw a cloak over me. Like, but, you know, this isn't foolproof. And I didn't even know, like, it was like an invisibility cloak. And I didn't even know that those like existed, but I was sure happy to have one. And it was like all of us just went, oh, it was like, okay, this isn't foolproof. You're still going to have to shift like super hard, but it's going to help you a lot. And I was like, okay, no problem. Like, I'm ready. And it was time. I shot in, and next thing I know, I'm like right in front of this thing. And this is like real this time. And I'm like, okay, I have to cut this thing. And so I get up close enough to it so I can cut it. And I'm like not wasting any time. I just want to get it over with. So I put my arms up, just ready to cut. And right when I'm ready to cut it, I realize, oh my gosh, what's going to happen when I'm done? Like, what is this place? Like no one's going to notice that I just cut it. And then I'm panicking because I just then had that thought for the very first time. I'm like, how am I supposed to like do this? You know, like what's going to happen? You know, like whatever. It was too late to think about it at that point. I just had to cut. The sword appeared, and I started to cut, and there comes the cat, come jumping, and I was just like, oh, sorry, cat. And I just smacked the cat right on the head, but I couldn't stall for the cat. They already warned me not to stall for the cat. So I cut it, and I was right. Like, the biggest pinwheel of all is standing like right next to me, and he is pissed. Like, pissed isn't the word. And I'm like hiding under this like cloak thing, and I'm like shifting as hard as I can, and I'm like terrified about my cat too, and I'm like trying to like open one eye, like had a meditation just really quick to make sure my cat's okay. And while my cat was like really stunned, like the cat was fine, thank goodness, but I didn't know if I was gonna be okay. I'm like freaking out because like he's like right there, and he's like, who did this? And he's like so mad, like everything's just shaking, and I'm just like, oh my god. And I'm like, and he's like looking that way, and he's like scanning for who did it. And he's looking, and I'm like, oh my God, he's going to step on me. I realized that like, he's going to step like right on me. So I needed to move like ASAP. And there was a tree behind me. So I like shot into the tree, and then I'm like in the tree, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't like practice shifting into a tree. You know, I can't do a tree. I'm like, but I had the cloak. And so the cloak was like helping to like make me invisible, but I could see him coming around with his eyesight again. I was right. He would have stepped on me, and he's coming. I'm like, he's going to look right at me. He's going to look around. I'm like, I got to get out of here like right now. And I just went, and I just shot out. And so I made it out, obviously, but the work was not done yet. But he did see me. He saw me fly out to completely. I just got like this ring in my ear too. Just come on. Okay. So the fairies, though, the blessed fairies were the ones, when I cut it, they were the ones that grabbed it. You're wondering where it went after I cut it? They grabbed it, ran it over to the Grand Canyon, and were waiting for me to get over there. So after I flew out, like, peace out, brother, you know, brother from another world, brother here to help us learn. And I want to tell you, if anything bad's ever happened to me, like since then, it wasn't like hit the devil or the pinwheel's fault. Do you know what I'm saying? It's hard to explain, but go back to the beginning and why we're here in the first place and how the shadow energy got introduced in the first place to understand what I'm trying to say. But you know, we make our choices in life. But the fairies were amazing. So for one last time, I got to use the sword, and I cut it open, and all the shadow energy like went right into the Grand Canyon, and the Mother Earth Gaia just drank it so much, like with like fertilizer, just like a much needed drink. And with that, after about a month, I had to go back to the area and just make sure that it got healed up. We used like this like like spiritual gauze like over it to make sure that it was like getting healed up. And I was scared to go back, but they were like, don't worry about those things, you know, those little pinwheel things, don't worry about them. They're like, and I was just like, okay. I honestly think that the fairies and them had a big duke out. I ain't joking you. I don't know that for sure. I don't, that's not coming from the angels, but that's the only thing that I can think of. Where they went, why they were gone, why, I don't know. I don't know. But anyway, we owe the fairies a big, huge thank you. And whether you believe in them or not, just, they helped you anyway. And I want to thank the fairies, because we wouldn't be here in our ascension without the fairies, without their help and their assistance with that. And then, yeah, about a month later, the grid was able to get finished. So nobody was happier than me. I remember I woke up one day and it was just so quiet. It was like, and I realized that the factory had stopped, but the factory had been going on for so many like millenniums. It just seemed like since the beginning of time, this factory had been working on this grid for so long. We'd just been working on it forever, that like it was just part of my life. Like, and I didn't even realize that it was going on until it stopped. And I woke up and I was like, oh my God, the grid's done. And Metatron was like right there, and he's like, the grid's done. I'm like, the grid's done. The grid's done. Like, nobody was happier than me that the grid was done, because that was a terrifying experience to heal that part of the earth. So that we could move on with our bad selves and get going here with this ascension and loving each other and enjoying our time here on earth, whatever it may mean to each one of us. So thank you to the fairies, and thank you to the angels, and thank you to even the shadow side and everything, just for everything that we've learned. And so we're coming to a time when the lessons are going to become less frequent, less painful. We get stronger. We will evolve. We will. It's not going to happen overnight, but little shifts here and there. And the more people that can ascend and move to this space of faith, the better. And the light will just eventually just overtake the dark, and we'll have our justice. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here, and I appreciate you. And thank you for listening to my story. And all right, thank you. If you have any questions, I guess you can put them in the comments, and I'll try to get to them as much as I can. Thank you so much, and love yourselves. Mwah. And thank you for all you do. Thank you. Namaste.